Happy anniversary, Open and Affirming Coalition of the United Church of Christ. Happy 50 years of making revolution. Happy 50 years of pushing doors so many of us can enter. Without your visionary work, many of us wouldn't be in ministry. Our dreams of serving God as pastors would be unreachable. Your work matters. Your work has changed and it has saved lives. For that I thank you. The scripture today only appears in the Gospel of Luke. And it's this particular send off of the other 72 charged to go first where Jesus was planning to visit. The Jesus we serve, dear siblings, wants us to go before him to prepare the way. The Jesus we serve wants us to walk together and trust the journey. The Jesus we serve wants us to open doors for those coming behind us. Jesus' command to go in pairs is community organizing at its best. Jesus is teaching us early on that the work of justice and bringing good news is community work. Justice cannot be reached by only one person. Hands and hearts have to come together to build the world that we dream of. A world where no one is rejected for living out their truth. A world where nobody is pushed away for living out who God has created them to be. The United Church of Christ ventured into ordaining Reverend Bill Johnson 50 years ago. I am sure that was the work of more than one person. I'm sure many fought to gain the recognition that we, too, LGBTQ people, could be pastors. Those who dare to go first. Those who push the doors when every door is closed. Those are visionaries of a world that doesn't exist, a world that comes into being because the madness of their love for justice. Those are Jesus' ambassadors, Jesus' followers. Jesus reminds us in this scripture that the harvest is plentiful and the workers are always few. Siblings, the harvest is plentiful and the workers are always few when transgender young people and their parents have to face persecution for gender-affirming health care. The harvest is plentiful and the workers are always few when states ban the contributions of the LGBTQ community in history and in the schools. The harvest is plentiful and the workers are few when laws are written to ban us from loving freely and when our mere existence becomes a threat. And yet, Jesus wants us to go before him to prepare the way. In December 2011, I founded Ministerio Latino, an open and affirming Spanish-speaking UCC congregation in Northern California. I started my ordination process convinced that if I was going to be ordained, my call was no other than to plant this church, the first Spanish-speaking UCC open and affirming church of Northern California. Somebody had to do it. I myself needed that church. All my growing up in church had happened in places where my first language, Spanish, was spoken. I know for a fact that my community needs more and more churches that deliver the good news of liberation and unconditional love from God to the LGBTQ community in our language and embedded in our culture. The Pew Research Center surveyed Latinos, and it showed that 83% of Latinas in the U.S. claim a religious affiliation. This is 3% more than the general public. Yet, only a handful of Spanish-speaking Christian churches welcome and affirm LGBTQI people. A very defining moment of my ministry happened when Reverend Tracy Blackmon sent me to provide pastoral care for the families affected by the Pulse tragedy in Orlando, Florida 6 years ago. I woke up to the news on June 12, 2016, and my first thought was, this is a hate crime. As the day progressed, the number of those dead kept increasing. I felt immense sadness and frustration. I knew that many Spanish-speaking evangelical churches were going to take the opportunity to preach about those gays deserving to die that way and how this was God's will for those people. I myself had been that type of Christian. A type of Christian that sends everybody to hell with no compassion. And I have no compassion for myself as well as I was struggling with my sexual orientation. I told my wife how this was being heavy in my heart. And she calmly said, last I checked, you are a lesbian, you are Latina, you speak Spanish, and you are a pastor, and you have to go. And I went. I had one purpose in mind. I want to tell these families that their loved ones didn't deserve to die at the hands of hate. I needed to let them know that this wasn't God's punishment and that their brothers, sons, sisters, daughters were beloved children of God, created perfectly. And I did. I had that opportunity. I pray, I cry, I hug these families in the comfort of their own language and understanding the culture and what happens when pain strikes. I came back knowing that I had to find a way to do full-time ministry. All up to then, I had only been doing ministry on the side and on volunteer basis. I was working in the nonprofit sector to support myself because my community is recently arrived LGBTQ people, often seeking asylum, who cannot support a pastor. During COVID, our community was one of the first impacted by stay-at-home orders, losing their ability to work. So to serve this community, I had to support myself. The Pulse experience showed me that the harvest is plentiful and that the workers are few. Many resources were available to support the families of those who had been killed. However, there weren't that many Spanish-speaking clergy who had an open and affirming approach to pastoral care. In 2018, I decided to quit my secular job and to begin fundraising for my salary as a pastor. I haven't looked back. God has provided everything I need, everything my community needs. Like the promise in this passage, this is what Jesus wants from us, to go in trust, not to carry the bag, not even choose. He wants us to trust in that God who's beyond our imagination, who will hold us and carry us through the work of welcoming everyone. In these past 50 years, NA has reached the unimaginable. And yet the work is not yet done. The harvest continues to be plentiful and the workers continue to be few, but those workers, dear siblings, the courage, the resolute, has made miracles happen. So let's continue doing whatever it takes so that everyone has a place at the table. Thanks be to God.